Start early. Don't you know that?
I now call the Snoqualmie City Council meeting to order. All please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilmember Mayhew, please lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll ask the city clerk to please take the roll call.
Councilmember Jeans.
Here.
Councilmember Ross.
Here.
Councilmember Holloway.
Here.
Councilmember Mayhew.
Here.
Councilmember Lissay should be joining us any moment. Councilmember Sundwell.
Here.
Councilmember Shepherd.
Here.
Mayor Larson.
I am here. Given that Councilmember Lissay is not called back in yet, can I have a motion to excuse Councilmember Lissay?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to excuse Councilmember Lissay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. With that, we will, do I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda tonight. Is there any discussion, Councilmember Sundwell?
Yes, I would like to remove from the consent agenda and from the agenda entirely, Agenda Bill 18-141, purchase of replacement vehicle. That needs to undergo some work and hopefully be back in 2 weeks.
So back to committee, okay.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second to, well, let me ask this, are there any other items before? Or Councilmember Sundwell, just as a point of order, could you, I think you put that in the form of a motion. I'm wondering if we could just make all the requests and then do it in one motion.
Oh, yeah, I don't need that. Yes, I'd
We
like
don't
to
need a
remove.
motion, yeah, we'll just note all the items to amend. So if that's okay. Councilmember Holloway, or did you have something to add, or?
Not till we get to it.
Okay. Any other items then, Council? Councilmember Mayhew?
Yeah, just wondering if, Mr. Hoffman, if this Human Services Committee report and recommendation should be on the agenda tonight, or is that being held for later, for another meeting?
Thank you. That item was discussed at CD committee last week. It was decided that it would come back as part of the budget discussions to be determined, and the agenda bill would go away.
Okay, and that'll come back at a future budget presentation?
Exactly. We
Thank
just
you.
don't know
Sorry.
which
Or
session.
I have nothing.
Per the committee's recommendation, it would be approved as part of the budget, not as a separate agenda bill. All right, for the record, Councilmember Lissay has now joined us. Councilmember Shepherd?
Nope, I'm fine.
Okay. All right, with that, with the amendment as noted by Councilmember Sundwell, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Councilmember Lissay, are you here?
I'm here.
Very good.
Is he, I'm seeing something saying we don't have a live stream working.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Shepherd, what?
Okay.
All right, with that, we're going to move on to this time to citizens' comments. Is there anybody from the public who would like to comment this time? And just as a few matters of protocol. So Snoqualmie citizens who are not present here have a right to have their elected representatives perform their duties on behalf of the city in an efficient and orderly manner. Therefore, comments will be limited to 3 minutes each. Please wait to be recognized. Come to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Direct your comments to the council as a whole and not to individual members. Please note that this is not a time to ask questions for the council, mayor, or staff, or to engage in debate. The council will quietly and respectfully listen to your concerns. And last, please respect the decorum of these proceedings, as all due respect will be afforded to you. So with that, I have a few people that signed up to speak. We'll start with Anna Sotelo.
Anna Sotelo, 7713 Center Boulevard, Southeast. Just after sitting through the budgeting session, I know you can answer me, but I'm just hoping that someone can help me understand what happened to the goals and objectives final session. In my opinion, I don't remember it ever being held, and I was present for all of those. They also weren't recorded, and that kind of is a concern to me. I was waiting for the cleaned up list, and I still haven't seen it, and I don't know if it's something that's available. I would hope that the list is available. I really don't want to have to do a public record request for something like that, especially after I read Jody's staff report tonight. So I just would hope that things like that could be a little more readily accessible. I was really concerned with the 1.25 million being transferred from general to capital for the community center, which is technically a YMCA. I guess before like to see it leave the general fund, I'd like to see the employees being taken care of. I heard a denial for a police officer during this budgeting session, not this tonight, but during the budgeting session for a police officer, for a fireman, for many other things that are needed. I know that our accounting system needs to be updated. I know that Jody would like to see that system that does the PRRs like that. There's so many things, and I'm going to say the biggest one is sidewalks. So sidewalks aren't sexy. None of those things are sexy. But I believe that you owe us fix sidewalks faster than projected, and it just seems a little irresponsible to not fix them faster when there's current litigations due to tripping. 10-year plan is just not soon enough. So I'd like to see the general fund things get budgeted that are really needed. And then if we're going to put money towards the capital, I'd like to see these sidewalks get fixed immediately. It's not fair, and I'd like you to all walk Center Boulevard and look at them, as well as all of Snoqualmie Ridge 1. An all-inclusive park as well. I don't understand why that wouldn't go before the YMCA, because I want to remind you that the city gave the community center to the YMCA. And I guess if that's not the case, then I'd like to see us take it back and recreate our Parks Department. Dan mentioned that sidewalks are on Capitol, but why not on the general too? Let's get them fixed as fast as we can. Yeah, again, not sexy items, but more needed. Thank you. Oh, the community center needs to be supermajority or YMCA funded, because we have so many things that need to take priority that have been identified. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sotelo. Donna Cronk?
Hi, I'm Donna Cronk. I am a Valley resident, 18 years, City of Snoqualmie 3. I live at 7429 Warren Avenue Southeast. Thank you so much, Mayor and the City Council, for hearing my comments. I want to raise the issue of the need to provide more transparency to the citizens of Snoqualmie on ordinance and resolutions presented to this council. My understanding, after completing the Citizens Academy and having one evening to witness a city council, we understood that an ordinance is presented in its formal terminology. Citizens are then asked to provide their statements for and against either, and then once those comments are final, the council then gets to ask their clarifying questions. At that time, you get more understanding of what is being presented. Unfortunately, once these clarifications are made, the citizens are no longer able to comment. When asked why this format is used, since it appears that the citizens are not able to provide their comments once full clarification and understanding is made, Mayor provided that the change was made for better time management. And I can understand the mayor's need to time manage the format. I'm a head of a large organization. I agree with this challenge. I also recognize the need to listen to your constituents and for them to feel heard by their elected officials. I'm not certain that this format actually meets that second need. So I'm going to offer a compromise for your consideration. Continue the format as the mayor has designed, but with the addition of the formal ordinance in its formal terminology, also provide a citizen impact statement using normal general language that a citizen could understand. Then they can provide their comments on that statement. Because right now I don't think that your citizens feel that they are being heard because they don't really understand the terminology because it's so formal that you're presenting. You can continue your format as it stands right now. So that is my compromise that I offer to you as for your consideration, and I do thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Cronk, and thanks again for attending the Citizens Academy. Leslie Shepard.
Leslie Shepherd, 7516 Snowberry Avenue. For the record, I have never had a problem with the Salish expanding its hotel. I think this area could benefit from a few more upscale tourist options. However, I am concerned with the final approved Salish expansion that is both out of character and far exceeds the scope of development that people in the Snoqualmie Valley want. People visit here and want to live here because of the area's natural beauty. They do not come to see a giant parking lot or a convention center, which, by the way, according to recent and federal and Washington law, can easily become a casino with city approval. However, I'm even more concerned that the information given to the public regarding this project was extremely confusing and or totally misleading. I'm going to present my little Exhibit A here. This is a map. This map is posted on the city website for the public to see. And also on the website, it lists the project site as 49.6 acres. This is the only map on the website, and it shows the scope of the project. So I like to read documents and make heads and tails of everything on my own. And I couldn't make heads or tails of what was going on because there was references to Parcel D, Parcel L, Morgan Parcel. I didn't know what these were. So I went to the county, and I took the legal description from the Second Amendment of the development agreement. And they mapped out from the legal description, which is the only thing that holds up in court, and the only thing in what you voted on, and the only thing that is that has precedence here. I took the legal description, and the county is showing me a very different picture. This yellow portion is what's on the website. This is what I believed was going to be the Salish expansion. However, the legal description includes this huge red portion that is nearly 60 acres. And this is referred to in some documents as Parcel D, other documents as Parcel L, and quite possibly part of it as the Morgan parcel. So all 6 of you voted 2 weeks ago.
Ms. Shepherd, if you could please stay at the microphone, otherwise your comments might not be caught on
Okay.
tape.
2 weeks ago, 6 of you voted on the Salish expansion. What is the Salish expansion? I don't even know. The county is saying something very different than what is on this map. I also want to point out that if indeed, as per Amendment 2, this red area was annexed, there was no public hearing for such an annexation. And the third thing I want to point out is has to do with due process. And a notice was sent out to the parcels.
Ms. Shepherd, if you could quickly conclude your comments. in
105
one
parcels,
sentence.
but I see a notice that was sent to only 14
All
people.
right, thank you very much. If you have anything else, you could certainly submit it for the record. Thank you for your comments. All right, Monica Lowney.
Monica Lowney, P.O. Box 493. So as Leslie discussed, the Salish expansion was approved by 6 out of 7 of our council members very recently. Not much public notice was given of this meeting. It was a special meeting with no public comment allowed. Ms. Shepherd was the only dissenting vote. The quasi-judicial method was used, which means our council members should act as judge and do their due diligence and research. And in this case, I believe 6 members failed to do so. They did not clearly acknowledge the additional 60 acres that is clearly in the development agreement, not even mentioned in our Valley Record article that's out this week. They also accepted a 12-year-old traffic study to be used. Half of the ridge was not even built 12 years ago. Unacceptable. They did not take into consideration any impacts on the future casino, which many believe will be built. The DUI impacts our community will be seeing, not only on the Snoqualmie Parkway, but the traffic impacts on Highway 18 and the Highway 90 interchange, knowing full well that construction will be happening at that interchange soon. No additional funding provided to our police or fire department. DOT has already determined the Green Bridge down by Highway 202 cannot handle heavy traffic, heavy logging trucks, and weight bearing on that old bridge. The utilities across that bridge are also maxed out. No discussion. Gary Norris already informed the city of this. DOT is not okay with heavy traffic being on the 202 highway, nor sitting on their bridge, which they're responsible for. We're going to have heavy logging trucks clear cutting about 100 acres that we now know of, that borders Fall City, coming through our neighborhood on a daily basis. No discussion of that, no discussion of how that will affect residents, or Fisher Avenue, by the way, which we still do not have a stoplight after all these years. And the mayor has still refused to respond to my request for a citizen-funded traffic study that we paid for, that was presented to the city both in writing and in person back in August. We're still waiting for that, Mayor. We'd like to hear from you. No assessment on environmental impacts. We have osprey in the forest up there. There are bald eagles. No discussion. All these council members thought it was fine. So I actually asked Bob Jeans, Catherine Ross, Matt Lassay, and James Mayhew to refrain from voting because they have a club membership at the Ridge, which allows them a 30% discount at the Salish. Under the appearance of fairness doctrine, this is a conflict of interest. They chose to vote anyway. I have a problem with that. Also, Matt Lassay admitted that he has personal and professional ties with architects involved in this project, and Catherine Ross's daughter worked at the Salish all last summer.
All right,
So
thank you, Ms.
I hope
Monica,
you
thank you.
reconsider your vote. I really think it's illegal what you did since
All
you
right.
had no public hearing
Monica, thank you for your
with the
comments.
acreage that you added.
Right, Becky Fletcher. Becky Fletcher.
Mayor, Council, it's Bastian. I didn't take Fuzzy's last name, but
sorry,
I'm
Becky.
still, I'm not. I'm still proud to be his
I
wife.
don't know who wrote that on there, but someone, if that was
Oh,
you.
well, that's okay. That's
So
okay.
Monica wrote that on there, so.
Okay, so first, Monica, it's okay, honey. Okay, so, here's what I'd like to do for a moment is have a moment of silence, no matter if we're divided or not, to at least show some respect for the families that lost their loved ones in the horrific fire that continues to grow in California. And if we're not careful with our development, the same thing could happen to us, especially if we're not prepared. So if we could please. A moment's just not enough time, thank you. I'd also like to thank Matt Mundy, who's part of the strike. Team 5, who's down with engine 281 down at Camarillo Airport, waiting for dispatch to be going to wherever they need to go. So we have families and friends from the Valley and all over Washington, which is, they're out there fighting for us, fighting for their lives. I'm also here because I didn't have a chance to speak at the last council meeting because I had so much respect for Lieutenant Kelly Gall and his son, who got very high honors. And anyway, what I really wanted to talk about tonight is vision, values, and mission. And I don't know if whose statement this is that we got in our Citizens Academy notebook. And it says, transparent in every action, responsive in addressing all concerns, accountable in all we do, innovative in our work, and trustworthy in the eyes of those we serve, and sustainable fiscally and environmentally. I was told that this was a Brad Toft thing. I don't know where this came from, but this is not what we are. There is no transparency. We are not having a time for city council meetings, or not council, but town hall meetings. Isn't that what you wanted us to do, is have some council meetings, Sean? I mean, town hall meetings where we could have questions? It's not happening. A Political Perspective by Mayor Matt Larson, September 12, 2018. Politics, Body of Citizens. Plato says, political systems are inherently corrupt. Power corrupts, Absolute power corrupts, absolutely. And I can have Joan Palago make copies
Ms.
for
Beck?
anybody who hasn't seen this, but is quite appalling. It's a travesty.
Ms. Bastian, if you could please conclude your comments
Well,
in like less than in a sentence.
I think this should really be looked at and revised because this is talk about corruption, it screams it. And it's not fair to citizens who pay Dan Marcinko's big wages that we aren't listened to.
Thank you, Ms.
And
Thank you.
that's how that works.
Thank you, Ms. Bastian. All right, is there anyone else who didn't have a chance to sign up that would like to comment at this time? Wayne, please, Mr. Russell.
It's Wayne Russell, 8438 Meadowbrook Way, Southeast Snoqualmie. And I agree with most of what these ladies said, but my concern was this past weekend, at first I have to thank Bob Larson. I got to meet his wife this past weekend, talking to somebody on the ridge that I didn't know, and all of a sudden Bob walks up and shakes my hand. And met Mark Hoffman too, for over at the mill site deal, because naturally I saw the barriers were moved as I was going up to the ridge, because I always drive the mill ponds instead of going through downtown. And there was a backhoe there, and I assume when I see the Jersey barriers moved that something was going on with the mill site, and it was. Supposedly there was a gas leak, and I think we're getting further evaluation on that. And my concern is the lines probably went in the early 1990s, okay? And nobody out there, according to Public Works, knew there was a gas line going out there. So somehow something's wrong, and the only leaks I've ever known from gas lines, except for like the one in North Bend that we felt shake the buildings here, somebody installed something improperly. Main gas lines normally are damaged by excavation or by somebody transiting with heavy equipment. So my guess, I'm guessing, okay, somebody was doing something. And the other thing I found out from a private citizen is that there's supposedly another entrance gate to the mill site. Okay, now, if that's taken off, if you put another entrance site in away from the mill pond other than the one that goes out to the 5-mile pit, all kinds of stuff can be going on there. And from what I saw on the agenda and some of the stuff I was looking at, mill site stuff is going to start coming up before you folks too. And along with the traffic issues that these ladies are talking about, what happens when you put that, if you looked at that building that they're planning on putting on the mill site and the rumor of a bridge going across from the parkway, who's going to fund it? Again, we go to cops, firefighters, and the rest of this stuff. Who's going to fund it all? Us, the citizens. And many of us are getting to the point where we can't really afford to hardly live in Snoqualmie, King County, or the state of Washington. Myself, my wife, and I have discussed it a few times already of probably leaving just because of the way business is being handled, and most of us are not being taken care of. And my one other issue I have to bring up is when I went to the Ridge for my granddaughter's soccer game, is we talk about all this parking stuff down here being a problem. Well, the Ridge was as big a problem. When I met Bob's wife, it's because I walked over 2 blocks just to get to my car after I dropped my wife off. Because the parking on the Ridge for the Jeannie Hansen Park is atrocious. I don't know how you people up there can put up with that. And the odd part was is when I got down to the Parkway in 202, there was about 20 cars heading into the round, taking a left turn in a line out towards the falls. So I said, well, I'm going to go through town. So I went to the right. And when I drove through town, the parking lot by King Street was packed full. I don't believe you could have found a spot in it, and there were cars parked all the way up to the 76 station and in the Methodist parking lot. So once the winery gets put in, since you folks are approving this stuff, I'd like to know where all these people are going to park. It's really sad. I'm sorry, but again, I thank Mr. Larson and Mr. Hoffman for as efficient and quick as they answered. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Is there anybody else at this time would like to speak? All right, seeing no one else move forward, we'll move on to public hearings, presentations, proclamations, and appointments. We'll start with a public hearing is now open regarding the 2019-2020 revenue sources. I don't know if there was another sign-up sheet up there, but
They're both blank.
okay. These were blank. However, if there's anything would anybody like to comment on this item, just on this item at this time? All right, seeing no one move forward, public hearing is closed. Public hearing regarding the 2019-2020 budget and the 2017-2018 biennium budget amendment is now open. Is there anybody who would like to speak to this item at this time? And just to this item? All right, seeing nobody move forward, public hearing is now closed. Then I move on to a proclamation. We're a small business forming the backbone of our local economy, generating jobs and enriching our community. And whereas the city of Snoqualmie supports the efforts of local small businesses and recognizes the critical role they play in our community. And whereas small business Saturday is a nationwide campaign to cultivate business for small merchants on the Saturday after Thanksgiving. And where a Small Business Saturday will stimulate economic growth locally for small merchants by following in the tradition of Black Friday and Cyber Monday, two of the busiest shopping days of the year. And whereas citizens are encouraged to consider shopping small merchants on Small Business Saturday as a way to boost the local economy and strengthen our small town, now, therefore, I, Matt Larson, Mayor of the City of Snoqualmie, hereby proclaim Saturday, November 14th, 2018, Small Business Saturday in the City of Snoqualmie.
November 24th.
Oh, I'm sorry, November 24th. All right, was there anyone here to receive this today? Or? All right, with that, we'll move on to the consent agenda. All items listed below will be enacted by one motion. Action items include minutes for October 22nd, 24th, 18th, and 29th, and November 1st, special and regular council meetings as stated in the agenda packet. Includes approval of warrants as stated in the agenda packet. Other approvals include Agenda Bill 18139, agreement for award of flood reduction grant funds between the City of Snoqualmie and King County. This is for Phase 2 Northern Street Culvert Replacement Design, award number 4.18.22. And Agenda Bill 18140, Northwest Hydraulic Consultants Task Order 41, Northern Street Culvert Assessment 2. Do I have a motion, council?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as stated. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on any of these items prior to action? Seeing no one move forward, is there any further discussion, council? All right, hearing no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried.
No.
Okay, that's 6 aye, 1 nay. Moving on to ordinances, Parks, Finance Administration Committee, Agenda Bill 18127, ordinance updating school impact fees pursuant to ordinance number 826 and chapter 20.10 of the Snoqualmie Municipal Code. This was introduced on the October 22nd and is ready for action tonight.
Nope. Give me a second.
You can just move on to that. I think the summary statement was already read in, so you can just move on, move to
Yeah.
the motion. Yeah.
Move to adopt ordinance number
1206.
1206, updating school impact fees pursuant to the ordinance number 826 and chapter 20.10 of the Snoqualmie Municipal Code. May I have a second, please?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve Agenda Bill 18127 as stated by Councilmember Holloway. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on this item prior to action? Ms. Sotelo.
Anna Sotelo, 7713 Center Boulevard Southeast. I guess I want to kind of just direct it more towards Ryan versus the council, but it's my understanding that the district is able to request, for example, for affordable housing. Right now, there's nothing set up that they could be charging impact fees for the affordable housing. And it's my understanding that it's pretty simple, that it would be a matter of him or the district, requesting it to council so that that could be looked at in future use. I just would like to see our district being able to collect as much impact fees from these kind of development that's going to happen. And especially if not as many development projects are going to be coming through, I'd really like to see that the district is able to get as much as possible. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Sotelo. Is there anybody else who would like to comment on this item prior to action? All right, seeing no one else move forward, council, any further discussion or questions? And Ryan Stokes is here tonight to address any questions. Councilmember Lassay, I know you had some items.
My items were addressed via email.
Okay, good.
Okay, other than the prior statement, these are impact fees on new housing to support the capital improvement projects that the school district is doing. There's no, affordable housing is not forgiven from these impact fees. Mark, correct me if I'm wrong.
Actually, they are.
Oh,
That was Mark Hoffman, Community Development Director. That's actually incorrect. There are two types.
Cool.
private versus public nonprofit. They just have to request it from the city. City makes the review and decision and forms the district. So there are provisions in Title 20 exempting out affordable housing projects.
Stay there.
Which GMA allows. Councilmember Sunwell and Councilmember Ross.
So, Mark, if I understand you correctly, so let's take, for example, the development that's currently in the process of being built at the top of the ridge. So would those developers have to request to be exempt from it?
That's correct.
And if they don't, then we should assume that $1,700 per unit would be charged?
That's correct.
And then, so the city council would have, not the school district, but the city council would have the say on whether or not they were exempted, correct?
It says city review. I can briefly scan for what the process is.
So it might just be you?
It's the city. I don't know whether it's
But in
administrative.
this case,
or
you are the
council.
city, right?
At some level, yes. Administrative.
As I
I'm
recall-
reading Title 20 right now. The reference specific to the request says the city shall review. Not having done one, I don't know what that process is, but I know it starts with a request.
Which has not happened, and you probably wouldn't expect at this point yet, right?
That's correct. We're only at civil.
Okay.
Councilmember Ross.
Is that a question for Mr. Stokes? The
Yeah.
city is here? All right.
Hi, Ryan Stokes, Assistant Superintendent of Snoqualmie Valley School District.
Great. I just noticed the single-family residence is increasing from about 10,000 to 11,300, about that. And then the multifamily residence is decreasing from about 2,200 to 1,700. And I know that, land values have increased in both areas. I'm just curious why the decrease in one and increase in the other.
Yeah, the major driver of the single family is the student generation rate that was seen. So we use Issaquah and Lake Washington student generation rates, which looks at how many students are generated out of a new home over the past 5 years. So 2 years ago, that rate decreased below what we have typically seen, and so this last year it came back up. So that was the major factor of the single family. The multifamily had a couple of factors. One being there's a credit for the what we would estimate is the 10 years worth of taxes that are in existence for those homes. So existing bonds and debt that we have, property taxes.
Right.
So the property value increase of the multifamily was pretty substantial, and that increased the credit. And there wasn't as much growth in the student generation rate. So where the student generation rate drove the single family, there wasn't really that for the multifamily.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Sunwell.
So Ryan, are you using the same math or formulas or whatever that as LDUB and Issaquah School District? Is that what you're saying?
We use their student generation rates instead of doing our own, because we don't feel like we have, while we have a lot of single family, we don't have a lot of multifamily, and so for the past number of years, we've just used other neighboring districts, what their student generation rates are.
And are you bound by that? So when you see a reduction in something, are you sort of either legally or maybe just ethically bound to follow that with a lower rate? Or
We could
vice
choose
versa?
to change, we could try to look at our own and see if that was a change, but we did not do that at this point.
Okay.
Councilmember Shepherd.
So I noticed that in Issaquah, they elected to increase their fees in order to maybe make a trade-off between who is spending more money towards schools, whether it's the new residents or the existing residents. And I understand the school district wasn't all that excited about that prospect. And I'm just curious what your reaction would be if this council were to try to increase how much our developers or how much these fees, if they were to be increased. What would you feel about that?
I can't speak directly to Issaquah's situation. I know there are jurisdictions in the area. The part of the calculation requires a local share, and King County has determined that at the beginning of this impact fee legislation. Sorry, I don't know the right terminology. King County uses a 50% local share that is a reduction in the fee, so 50% of the cost is then reduced on that fee. There are a number of jurisdictions that are discussing whether or not to change that. My understanding is that's a jurisdictional issue, not necessarily a school district, because we follow what they are. So I know there are some jurisdictions that have discussed that. I don't know any that have taken action on that.
Okay.
It's our collective recollection that I don't recall that it's ever, the question of for affordable housing development ever coming back to the council for approval of a waiver of a mitigation for school impact fee. I think that's always been done administratively. That approvals usually come with the approval of the plat or the project. Ryan, I don't know if you can speak to that too. I mean, I recall that we've always basically exercised those waivers of fees for affordable housing across the board.
My understanding is that the school district kind of follows whatever the city has decided on what they determine to be a multifamily, what properties are or not exempt from that. I don't know the status of the S20. I thought the project that was initially a few years ago was going to be exempt, but I haven't followed this.
I think Mark may have found it. So.
There is no specific language, but I would refer to the developer shall execute such agreements and restrictive covenants as provided by the district to ensure that the units are maintained as low-income housing. So I see all of the review and determination being administrative for sure, but it's the executions of those agreements to make sure that it's essentially in the stock of affordable housing for a period of time to be possibly either district and city council.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, council? All right, with that, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Brian, thank you for taking the time to join us this evening, answer questions. All right, moving on to Agenda Bill 18132, ordinance certifying an increase in the general taxes for the city of Snoqualmie for the fiscal year commencing January 1st, 2019 on all property, both real and personal, in said city, which is subject to taxation. The general taxes are for the purpose of paying sufficient revenue to carry on the departments of said city for the ensuing year. This was introduced on the 22nd and should be ready for action on the 26th of this month. So any other questions or comments at this time, council? All right, with that.
Well, I guess I'll make a comment. Based on the budget data we just reviewed prior, we had a surplus year. This year, we're projected to have $2.5 million. In the next 2 years, we're expected to take $2 million and sequester it for community center. In 2019, we'll have a $900,000 surplus, and it goes on in there for projected. So first, I'd like to take credit that one of my campaign statements actually worked out, that we're no longer $2 to $1 million in the hole within the next 5 years, which was kind of the statement in November last year at this time. But I would like to again suggest to the council that under those conditions that we consider having the courage of banking the 1% increase for this year. I don't think the $77,000, call it $80,000, is going to tweak these in any way. It's significantly lower than that. And considering that we're now projecting surpluses, I don't think the scare comments of we're going to reduce staff if you do this are valid. So instead of acting in fear, I request that we consider acting in courage and banking it for a year.
Councilman Sunwell.
So I have two questions. I'm not sure who's going to answer these, but first of all,
I have a question.
Okay, thank you.
We were given a number, I want to say it was like $16 on average or something like that. So I'd like to have on the average household of 500,000, about whatever the number is.
700,000. Yeah.
700,000, what this would mean on an annual basis. So I don't know if Andrew has that number or what, but while you're getting that number, I also want to understand the ramifications of punting on it now, what our options. My understanding is if we came into a situation a year from now, we're like able to take 2% or something. I just want to understand the what we give up or surrender if we punt now, and what are we not able to recoup by punting?
So to your first question, if your home has an assessed value of $500,000, essentially the 1% would equate to $10.90.
Okay, so no one has a house that's 500. So
Drew, per what? Per year?
Per year, yes, annually.
So $10 for 500. Okay, that's a place to start.
Or
Okay.
$11, so let's start there.
You know the 700,000 number though, don't you?
Yes, I do. I have that right here. It's been provided in your supplemental document too, attached to the agenda bill. That's $15.28.
Which is the average in Snoqualmie.
So to your
yeah.
second question, if we were to punt this to the next year, as you stated, and I think as we addressed in the council agenda report, the supplemental report, you would be able to take out, say, 2% next year if you wanted to for some specified purpose. It would give us the ability, if we were to bank this, essentially set the increase ordinance that's been provided to zero. That would allow us, that would essentially bank the capacity so we could use it next year if we needed to, if we had some determined reason to do so. In terms of the impact on a year-to-year basis, you would essentially take the 1%, which is $77,000, and then you can compound that by 1% annually over time. I believe in one of the previous budget presentations, Robert actually alluded to that in a chart he provided previously.
So what you're saying is if we punt now, we lose the compounding interest component, which is some number of dollars that I can't possibly map.
It's relatively small.
Just
right.
like the increase.
Mm-hmm. I mean, in addition to that, we're not necessarily, well, no, that's fine, I won't.
Okay.
I think that's it.
Councilmember Lissay.
Yeah, I want to state that I reiterate what fellow council member said, that we should be considering holding on the 1% and banking it for next year. From my understanding, all we're going to lose in that is the $77,000 plus some interest for this year, because if we enact it next year, when we have a better picture on what it could be used for, what it could be targeted for, it's really just the interest of this year that it wouldn't be used for. In addition to that, I also reiterate that if we're drawing down reserves and we're drawing funds from that to fund other projects, we clearly don't need this 1%. I think it's prudent on our behalf to address the budget in a way that is responsible and does not increase taxes for our citizens, and to use the money we have if we have extra. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Lissay. Any other discussion at this time, Council? Councilmember Ross, and then Councilmember Mayhew.
So I don't think it's a bad thing to have reserves and to keep reserves. This 1% is less than inflation. And we've negotiated contracts with several of our unions, and they're increasing much more than the 1%. In our budget that we're going through, we're also talking about, adding a parks improvement fund, a street and maintenance fund, adding some needed personnel, like into community development, working on economic development for our retailers in the Ridge and also historic downtown. There's a whole list of things that we're adding that's for our city. I also think that if you don't take it and you do go to Olympia and request elected officials for transportation money or anything else, they may ask, did you take your 1% property tax?
Councilmember Mayhew.
So I've shared with the mayor and the city administrator some concerns I have about the budget that's being presented to us. I think we've got a lot more work to do. I will just tell you that based on my reading of the numbers, a conclusion that we have a balanced budget I think is premature. And I think that they've been very respectful. They've taken my comments, and I think they're reworking these numbers. We'll see what they ultimately come forward with, but we very well may discover that the numbers are not quite what you think they are. I believe that our ongoing operating expenditures are not covered by our recurring general fund revenues. I believe that they're not. The presentation we have, I believe, is a little confusing and has led us to believe that maybe it is covered when in fact it isn't. And I think we've got longstanding policies about not spending one-time revenues for ongoing operating expenses. And I'm concerned that we are inadvertently matching revenues and expenditures. And when we see this more clearly, we'll see what my fellow council member was just saying, which is that without that 1%, not only are we not covering expenditures, but we fall further behind, and we're starting to chew into reserves. And I'll tell you, you can only do that so long, and you're out of reserves. And by the way, a lot of those reserves came from taxes that we don't pay all the time. They came from taxes that came once during the building of the ridge. Once we spend those, they're gone. So I think that these are good points that are being brought up, but I encourage us to keep watching the numbers and reserve your final decision until you really are sure about what you think is going on in the budget.
Councilmember Jeans and Councilmember Sunwell.
As we read this ordinance, the plan is to take action on it at our next council meeting. And as all of us know who are on the council and some of the citizens who attend these budget meetings, they have been filled with vigorous questions and plans by the staff to supplement and give us more information. I frankly question whether we can take action on the 26th. And I don't know whether we need to change the wording or just come to the 26th and if we need to, push it forward into December.
We have more budget meetings, Councilmember Jeans, between now and then, so hopefully you'll be prepared at that time. According to Jody, do you want to speak to that? Or
We have a deadline to
Robert
get it to
said.
King
Yeah,
County
yeah, right.
before, and I believe that deadline comes before we're going to be able to approve a budget.
I believe it's November,
Last day of November.
last day of November is our absolute deadline, or we.
Because we have to report to King County that we are, if we are,
In the
so that
state.
they can then do whatever they do to enact it.
We have until November 30th to do that.
We have a $20 million budget. $78,000 is not going to make.
Councilmember Holloway, if you could use the microphone, please. Microphone.
Say it again into the microphone.
Okay. So we have a $20 million budget in general fund. $78,000 is not going to make or break that budget. We can make that decision and then continue working the budget either way.
Well, you want to give some thought to where you want to pull $78,000 out of the current proposed budget, so, on some enhancements or something.
We can go there if we want.
Well, you're going to have to, if that's what you want to do. Because we've always exercised the 1%, so that was built into my proposed budget. So if the decision is to not exercise it, then we will have to pull out $78,000 from somewhere in this budget.
And we can easily take it out of reserves. We can take it out of the 200,000 unplanned for affordable housing. We can take it out of the $2 million to go to community center. I will not win an argument that this is a large sum of money. This is a manageable sum of money that we could choose to take or not take.
Right. Compounded by 10 years, though, that's $780,000 or $800,000, then it becomes pretty real money.
This is not a bank loan, this is taxes, this is money coming out of individual taxpayers' house. I don't subscribe to that math.
Right. I shudder to think of us becoming some of those communities that, I can give you case studies of the communities that have not exercised their 1%, and a decade after the I-747 laws were passed, they're in pretty rough shape, and they're in pretty big holes to have to dig out of. So, Councilmember Sunwell, Councilmember Mayhew, and then Councilmember Shepherd.
So since we're not voting on this tonight, thankfully, I would request of the administration that we get you mentioned 10 years, that we get a 10-year outlook of what 10 years of doing this means, doing what we've always done, which is taking the 1%, right? Versus punting this year, taking 2 next year, and then 1. Because.
That's $78,000.
What?
That's $78,000. You would not take the $78,000 this year, or in 19, you would take it in 20, and from there on, the lines are parallel.
So you're saying you would take 2% in 20?
I'm not being asked to vote on 20 tonight.
Or even if it was 1, we just took the one next year. What I'm trying to get is, I don't think it's quite as obvious as 78,000 or whatever it is. I'm trying to understand what is the long-term impact of not doing it. And I think that's data that we should have before we make a decision.
Point of
Councilor
order,
Mayhew?
Mayor. Point of order. Shouldn't members seek recognition before speaking?
Yes. Sustained.
I know you did.
Well, Councilmember Sunwell did have.
He's talking about the pro tem guy that just keeps chirping over there.
Yeah, I know. I'll make a point to be better about that. Anything else?
Yes. $78,000 goes most of the way towards paying an employee. Every year you don't take $78,000, you're just firing another employee. I don't think it's a small amount. I think it's something we need to take seriously.
Councilmember Shepherd?
As far as history of other cities and not taking the 1%, I know Issaquah went for 5 years without taking 1%.
All right, any other comments or
So, other
Councilmember
than,
Holloway?
I'd be careful of those comparisons. You can compare us to North Bend, you can compare us to Issaquah, you have to look, in all fairness, you've got to look at the revenue structure of each of those cities and what that does to them when they do that. Those cities have a significant retail revenue, and so they're different than us. We don't have the retail base that those two cities do, so the comparison's not a good one. So put me on, I'm doing both sides of the argument, Matt.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, I could actually quickly.
I understand perfectly.
Our most recent.
You still
our
haven't
most-
been asked to speak, actually, which is interesting, so.
He had his hand up.
I had my hand up, he recognized me.
Our most recent studies to that effect showed that whereas we were leaking for every dollar that our residents spent, about over 70 cents of that went out of our city. In Issaquah, they not only capture the full dollar that their resident spends, but another $1.40 comes in from outside from places like Snoqualmie for a $2.40 capture rate versus a 70 cents leakage rate. So to that point, it is a profound difference. So you have to be careful about comparing apples to oranges. So, any further comments or discussions on this item, council? And again, I assume in some of our budget conversations, it won't just have to be for the night we're deciding on this in a couple of weeks, but we'll have opportunities to discuss this or look at it in more detail at our future budget meetings. All right, with that, we'll move on to Agenda Bill 18134, ordinance levying the general taxes and levying excess property taxes for the city of Snoqualmie for the fiscal year commencing January 1st, 2019, on all property, both real and personal, in said city, which is subject to taxation. The general taxes are for the purpose of paying sufficient revenue to carry on the departments of said city for the ensuing year, and the excess property tax levy is for the purpose of paying debt service on the city's unlimited tax general obligation bonds. 2016, all is required by law and providing for a collection thereof. Again, this was introduced on October 22nd. It will be ready for action in 2 weeks on the 26th. Any discussion on this, council, at this time? All right, Councilmember Holloway.
Other than I think we had the discussion, so.
All right. And actually,
Raise my hand.
I was remiss in asking if there's any members of the public that want to comment on this or the prior item since they're somewhat related. So if we could. Councilmember Lowney? Monica Lowney.
Monica Lowney, 493. Thank you for that, Mayor. I just want to say.
I just wanted to make your night, Monica.
Okay, thank you. Why did I only give them 2 minutes? Can we start the clock over? Because I don't think my time needs to be taken over that. And
You can keep talking and use up your 2 minutes.
okay, so you're not going to give it to me, fine. Okay, well, I think that obviously you guys are arguing over very limited issues. First, I want to point out nothing about this is in our agenda. Why isn't this in the public documents given to the public tonight? Everything you're discussing is not in here. It's not even listed on the agenda. Why is that, Mayor? We're talking about transparency here. Secondly, I agree with Wayne and some of the council members regarding tax increases that citizens are already having to absorb, whether it's the McCleary Law here in Washington State. You know, it's actually forcing a lot of people out of Western Washington. We're also looking at 1631, the carbon tax failed, so did the soda tax. People do not want additional taxes. And regarding the budget, we would like to see what the city's going to give. As a citizen, we're always asked to give more. What are you guys willing to cut? I see that, you know, we have an estimated revenue of $47,600,000 basically 47 million, but our expenditures are almost 59 million. So I'm a little confused where the surplus is, and we're arguing over $78,000. I see this 1%, issue come up every year at these council meetings, and it's always the same give and take, and the mayor interjects, which I feel is a little inappropriate because I think you interject too much. The council should be discussing this, not the mayor. And of course, it always gets passed over. Somebody like Sean or Matt makes an excuse why we should just not take the hit. Let's just kick the can down the road. Well, you know what? Things could happen in cities, natural disasters. We have a lot of needs. We have a 202 bridge that could fall in the river.
All right, thank
I
you.
think we need to set some money aside and cut taxes and cut health care
Sonny, thank you.
benefits for city workers.
Anna Sotelo? Anna?
Anna Sotelo, 7713 Center Boulevard Southeast. I just kind of want to give you a different perspective. And I've heard this now for the last couple of months when it's been discussed that it's either, average house is 700,000, 500,000. But one thing no one's really mentioned is the businesses. And I'm not sure if everyone's aware, but we pay our property owners property taxes. So it's part of our triple net. So in addition to our rent, we pay their property taxes. So I don't know what my building's going for. I know that when it got foreclosed, it was a $3 million building. I'm assuming it's probably at least $10 million. So that means that now my rent is going to go up, divided by 6 other people, and it's based on your square footage. So it's going to go up that much. So again, that's one aspect of it. The other one that's really concerning is, I'm a renter, both now for my business and for my home. So now my rent, and she gave me an increase because of last year. So I paid $100 more this year, or month this year, is what she increased it based on the taxes. And if that's going to keep happening, most people that can't afford these kind of taxes are renters. So I guess I hear constantly that it's only this much, but also someone like Wayne, who's pointing out that he's a senior on a fixed income. And it just seems I really agree with Councilmember Holloway on what he's saying, that it's such an insignificant amount compared to what we're looking at in the budget. And again, I find it insulting that this money is going to go frivolously to something that the YMCA should be covering, like for a community center, when we have things that need to be paid, like what Councilmember Mayhew has pointed out. We're not properly budgeting, and yet we're going to tax people before we know what those actual numbers are. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Anybody else like to speak to these two items? Yeah.
Sorry. Hi, I'm Arielle Van Gemmert, and my address is 8305 382nd Avenue Southeast.
In Snoqualmie? Or?
In Snoqualmie, yes. I've never spoken at a council meeting. It's a little intimidating.
You're doing well.
So this is a property tax increase? Is that what this is that you're discussing?
Yes.
Transparency, yes, I would like to thank you.
It's
I would
right
like
there.
to second what she said.
It's right there.
This is transparency, but it is very difficult to find as a citizen. I had no idea. It is incredibly difficult. I've lived here for 2 years, and trying to navigate what it is that you bring to the table is almost impossible. It's like a half-time job, just trying to get up to speed. And I actually have looked into it really hard. And I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but I second what she said earlier about this. And since I've lived in the city of Snoqualmie, my property taxes have almost doubled in 2 years. We can't afford it. It does, and they're big. And I am not a no-tax person generally, but they're huge. I support schools, I support roads, I support healthcare, wellness, low-income housing, all these things. But we can't do more, right? We've already got, I looked at something, the bond that's coming up. My property taxes are going up like another $500 on one bond per year. It's impossible for us. And we're Microsoft, man. I mean, like, yeah, please reconsider this. And I second the not knowing what our actual budget revenue, no one can agree on anything. Anyway, okay.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Russell.
Wayne Russell, 8438 Meadowbrook Way, Southeast. Anyhow, the point I have to bring up is the fact of revenues. Is my pension is basically $1,500 a month, and you guys were talking about $1,700 a month for low-income housing. Fortunately, I own mine. But my taxes were $5,200 on a house assessed by the King County assessor. That's only 400 and some thousand. Mr. Sunwall said there weren't many people that had houses that were under 500,000. Well, I'm afraid there's quite a few of us that do. We know they would sell for more if it's not a home. If it's a commodity, we can sell them. Now, my other issue is the fact that how many people in our city administration and work for the city live east of the mountains. I've talked to several of them that I know say they live over there, and there's several of them that I know are making at least $100,000 a year in this city. And unfortunately, they pay less than half the taxes we do here, and the property values are less over there. And I can't blame any of them for commuting across the pass when they have a better income and pay less taxes. Myself, if my pension goes south, I'll definitely be out of Snoqualmie and the state. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Russell. Yes.
I want to say Donna Cronk, 7429 Warren Avenue Southeast. I wanted to say thank you. Thank you for considering, and I really do agree with Holloway. I think that one thing that you might want to consider is what other tax increases are happening on our property in inclusion of the 1%. What is the county also going to present? Last year, I live by 2 seniors. They are on fixed incomes. An 11% tax increase on our property taxes last year. It was hard, and I have a good job, but it was still pretty tough to take. So if you could take a look at not just go, well, it's only $10. $10, I'm sorry, I work with individuals that, that $10 can be food, it can be medicine. So to just kind of go, well, it's just $10. For some, yes, but for others, no. It's a significant amount. So consider what other increases are being proposed to property taxes on top of your 1% before you make a final decision of, hey, is this really something that our citizens can absorb? And also think about your seniors. And we got a lot of them in the valley. And I'm sorry, they come into food banks, and it's sad to see it. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Okay.
Mr. Mayor, just one comment on the questions about the timing as far as the 30th of November. The statute provides that if the levy amount of the regular property tax levy is certified to the county assessor after the 30th day of November, then the county assessor may use no more than the amount certified for the previous year. And so this proposed regular levy ordinance includes not only the proposed 1%, but also increases due to new construction and the other typical components, adjustments, the value of utilities in the district and so on. So just wanted to make council aware of the timing limitations by the statute.
All right, we'll move on to Agenda Bill 18142.
Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry.
I heard this whispered, and it wasn't my head, although I had the same question. Can you say what you said again? Because I feel like I should have, that was really important, but I didn't understand it.
I think earlier in the council comments for the previous ordinance, which was the 1% increase ordinance, there was some comment about whether the decision on whether to take the 1% could be put off until December and not voted on before the end of November. And I think the city clerk had pointed out we were under a statutory deadline to certify the regular property tax levy amount to the county assessor by November 30th. And I just was looking at that and wanted to point out to the council the consequence of not hitting that date is you're limited to last year. And the property tax levy amount in the ordinance includes not only do you take the 1% or not, but some other components of an increase, included increase related to new construction and some other items, and you would be foregoing all of that if you missed the November 30 deadline. I just wanted to make council aware of that.
If I could just clarify, you mean the levy that was approved for this year would it roll over to 2019? It's not going to be last year, that would be 2017.
Well, it was the amount certified for the previous year for the taxing district. So
right. Okay.
That was the 2018 amount that was certified in 2017.
All right.
Right.
Councilmember Shepherd and Councilmember Jeans.
So this is a time when I'd love to see somebody put something on a whiteboard, because I heard that both times. I think I heard every single word you said, and it's still clear as mud. So as far as what you're saying, I'd like to see actual numbers put to it. If you wait until after the 30th, then it costs this, versus before the 30th, it would cost that. If you wait until next year, you'll lose this much. Something along those lines.
I don't know if Robert has the.
In all due respect, Councilman, or the city attorney, I don't think it's very likely we're going to go past the 26th on this,
Yeah.
so it's kind of a moot point if we could perhaps just move on.
Point of order, I mean, we have to do something prior to the 30th, with or without the 1%, but there are what he's saying is there are other items would come into consideration also, but we have to do something before the 30th.
Yeah, we could take that discussion up on the 26th
Yeah.
if it appears to come to it. So if we could just, let's not take up time on an issue that might not be an issue until it becomes an issue, so. Yeah. All right, are we ready to move on, folks?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, sorry, Councilmember Jeans.
I find it interesting that Brian Holloway, who has been on the council as long as I have, 14 years, that in those 14 years, I think I'm correct, I have voted yes on the 1%, and he has voted no on the 1%. And over those 14 years, our taxes, as well as all of our citizens' taxes, have increased substantially, all for good reasons. Every time something comes before us, or when it's the school district, or when it's another entity that has the opportunity to raise taxes, we listen to those things. I'm just saying that I'm going to take some fresh eyes when we pass the budget this time with respect to that 1%. I'm offended a bit by how staff will say, well, if you don't do the 1%, we're going to have to we're going to have to cut a job. And frankly, we as council members know that that there are a myriad of factors that we are considering with respect to enhancements for the city and the citizens, and we are to consider other matters where we need to be more conservative, where we need to cut expenses. So I don't think it's fair to say the 1% is going to kill us, but maybe you got to start somewhere and cut the cost of government, and so I'm looking forward to the 26th and thereafter with a fresh look at this 1%.
Thank you, Councilmember Jeans. I just wanted to clarify one comment, and that's that I don't recall that myself or the staff ever made the comment that by not taking the 1%, we'd be cutting a staff member. My point was simply that we would have to cut $78,000 out of the proposed budget, whether that's some project or initiative or, somewhere, revenue or reserves, as Councilmember Holloway intimated. So,
thank you.
Councilmember Sunwell.
So I'm glad we're not voting on this tonight, because I am really torn by this. One of the arguments I hear frequently is consider what other taxing jurisdictions are doing, and I understand what that argument's made. I'm just looking at of the nearly $10,000 my wife and I will pay in property taxes this year. $5,900 of that is because of the school. Is not because of the school district, but it's for education. I sat in on one or two of those meetings when they were deciding whether or not to do their levy increase, and there was no conversation about other jurisdictions because they were voted there by their constituents to manage the education of this valley. We are put into place to manage the infrastructure and the services of our city. So while certainly lending a blind eye to things that are going on around us, I don't know how much of my decision I can base on the fact that the county takes 10.9%, and the school district through the state and the school district takes 59%. And so what I struggle with is part of me says, yeah, I get that, because my wife and I will pay $10,000 in taxes this year. But the other part of me says I was elected to make sure that our city is financially that we're financially sound. And that has a lot of things. That deals with taxes and revenue. It also deals with expenses and making sure we pass a balanced budget. But this is a complex issue because there are a lot where everyone in this room is a taxpayer. And so we all feel it. So anyway, I don't really have much more to say than that, but it is difficult to task. And the next 2 weeks, as I think about how I'll vote, this will be a difficult decision.
Councilmember Holloway.
In the vein of doing homework, this was introduced on the agenda on October 22nd and has been on the agenda and will remain on the agenda till November 26th. This is not a pop-up. It was not on the agenda tonight. That statement is incorrect. There was a statement that this was not on the agenda tonight and while we were doing discussion. That just.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Simmel.
To kind of reiterate that point, I don't usually go to the Snoqualmie website because I have links on my computer to get to, but this agenda is literally 2 clicks from the Snoqualmie website. Now, it hasn't always been 2 clicks, thanks to Joan and the work of her team, but it has been for many, many months now. And so if you need help finding stuff, I'd encourage people to call the city. But this website is way, way more intuitive. City council agendas are 2 clicks away. And if you sign up for the emails from the city, you get them that way too. So it's pretty transparent.
All right. So with that, I'll move on to Agenda Bill 18142, Ordinance amending Ordinance 1186, adopting the 2017 and 2018 budget. Again, this was introduced on October 13th and will be ready for action on the 26th. And this is one pertaining strictly to approving all the amendments and changes that were made in the last biennium budget. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on this item at this time?
142.
Or just on this item?
Yeah, it's 143.
All right, seeing no one move forward, any further discussion on this, council, at this time?
Somebody, we may need to fix what's on the website for this one.
Because there's no summary statement.
Because, there's.
Open the staff report, please. Is there anything there? No, right there. Nothing? All right, we'll get it fixed, sorry.
All right.
All right. Moving on to Agenda Bill 18143, Ordinance adopting the 2019 and 2020 biennium budget. This was introduced on the 13th, and the action date is yet to be determined, most likely the first meeting in December. At this time, is there any member of the public that would like to comment on this item? Ms. Lowney.
Okay, so the agenda I'm referring to is the one that was given to citizens at the door. And as you mentioned, this is not in the agenda package as well. So,
Ms. Lowney, if you could just specifically talk to Agenda Bill 18143.
well, I would if I had it available to me, but you can't even bring it up on the computer screen. So how could I would love to be specific about it. And I wish I could sit for hours each day and
There's
study.
143.
That's 143.
Okay.
142 is the one that was
I don't see
missing.
the numbers. Anyway, please don't interrupt, Sean. This is my time, and if you interrupt me, I'm going to have to add time.
Please continue.
I would like to continue. I like what Bob said. I think the city needs to focus on cutting cost. We have to take cuts to fund our additional tax bills to accommodate your budget. And when I said I believe city staff should pay a part of their health care, I'm not referring to police and fire. I want to make that very clear. They put their lives on the line for us. But city staff members are not equal to police and fire. And they have multiple dependents on health care. I've been talking about this for years, Matt, and you could smile and laugh if you think it's funny. But you know, we have a gentleman in the back of the room with multiple dependents who I believe makes over $200K a year and pays zero toward his dependents. That's not okay. Most average citizens sitting in this room and on this council have to contribute toward their dependents' healthcare expenses. This is not a blank check. And regarding the budget that I'm seeing here, the numbers are not correlating with what you're discussing, and I'm not seeing a surplus. We don't have a rainy day fund. And again, I'd like to say, I would like to know what the city staff members here in this building will do to cut their cost, to help take a little bit of the burden off of their citizens, because we are being hammered with taxes. It's not only forcing people like Wayne out of the city of Snoqualmie, it's forcing people out of our state and out of Western Washington.
Thank you, Ms. Lowney.
You're welcome.
Anybody else at this time? All right, so no one else move forward. Any discussion, council, on this item?
Well,
Councilmember Sunwell?
I thought we had to read in a corrected one.
I had my hand, he didn't recognize
Oh.
me that time. Well, wait a minute, I gotta back up on your comment.
That was on Agenda Bill 143?
Right, okay, so it is for introduction tonight, all right. The city council is required by law to adopt a budget. The city council passed ordinance number 1096, establishing a 2-year fiscal biennial budget as authorized by the state legislature in RCW 35A.34. The city has prepared a budget that meets the requirements of the law, and this is just for introduction. And I believe I would further like to move that we have an alternate change that is handed out to each of you, kind of per the information we were shown tonight. So I'd like to introduce that change, we'd like to move that change into the agenda bill.
You want to move a substitute?
Move the substitute.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to replace the Agenda Bill 18143 with the substitute hard copy as presented to council tonight.
I have a comment, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir, go ahead. Councilmember Losay, and then Councilmember Shepherd.
Could someone please send me that hard copy?
The city clerk
Oh,
says
you
she
did.
did. She did send you that?
Oops, yes, you did. My bad.
All right. Councilmember Shepherd?
So what I would like to talk about is the fact that we don't have an opportunity for the public to talk at our budget deliberations. And I really think that it's unfair to our residents to not be able to participate in the conversation while we're deliberating. I've been watching other jurisdictions and their deliberations, and it appears that all that I've watched, they always have an opportunity for the public to talk. Even the city of Seattle allows their public to talk during their budget deliberations, and I think that it's unreasonable that we are not allowing that.
Councilmember Mayhew?
So I think, I think that we're not, I think the issue is how to publicize to the public when we give them an opportunity. Because I think that there's a whole bunch of people in this room that don't realize we held a hearing, a public hearing for that comment tonight, and no one came forward. So I think that the people in this room who clearly have comments about the budget didn't understand that that's what the purpose of that hearing was. So maybe we could help in the future explain this better. I think this gets to this idea of transparency that was brought up, so they would understand this is the time, this is how we'd come, et cetera. Because it's actually just factually false that we didn't hold hearings, we just held them tonight. But our public didn't know that's what was happening.
Well, it was notified, but Councilmember Holloway and then Councilmember Sunwell.
And just case in point, this agenda bill was introduced tonight. It'll be here until we finally take a vote. So every council meeting until that vote, this is available for comment. I do feel that in our budget workshops, that's more a time for concentrated conversation between council and administration to try to make the numbers line up. That gets very back and forth, and if we do the play back and forth, we'll never get through that conversation to a final thing to present to you to actually have your comments on. So that's why it's structured that way. Back to you, Matt.
Councilmember Shepherd and then Councilmember Mayhew, and actually I'm about to sort of say, these are sort of related, these questions and discussions, but and maybe we have our staff speak to what is the difference in this that's before them tonight before they vote on it, but there is a motion on the floor to amend this ordinance. So a couple quick comments and then we'll get back to the core of the motion on the floor, please. Councilmember Shepherd.
So the problem that I have with not having the ability to have a comment at the time that we're talking about some particular detail or aspect of our budget, you lose context of what you're trying to talk about. And I think it's important, according to what I'm seeing other jurisdictions do, they are
Point of order.
allowing.
This has nothing to do with the agenda we're talking
Yeah,
about.
I'm going to have to sustain that. I was trying to give some latitude, but it's really not.
Not saying
germane.
it's not an important topic, it's not
It's not
what we're
germane to
talking about.
the motion on the floor. So I've asked the members to please focus to the motion on the floor. Councilmember Shepherd.
When is it a good time to have this conversation?
During budget discussions.
I don't know. I'm looking for ideas. I mean, in the context of the budget discussion, I suppose, we devote 2 to 4 hours a night of discussing budget, and you just have ample time to discuss it at that time or bring it up at that time. Councilmember Mayhew.
Just a quick question, Mayor. Will there be additional public hearings on this budget where the public will have a chance to give input?
Jody, could you speak to that, please?
There will be additional public hearing, I believe, on the 26th. It is published in the Valley Record, and information is available on the website.
And so that it's this, on tonight's agenda, it was this public hearing on the 2019-20 budget. It'll be similarly titled in the future, is that right?
Exactly.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Sunwell.
So back to the topic here, can someone explain, so whoever, explain the differences
Yeah.
between what was originally published and what's been presented for us, just so I can understand what the difference is?
Basically, the changes that we've made is we've incorporated 2 ordinances into the agenda bill here. You'll see version A and version B. There was some conversation at the F&A committee last Tuesday, basically about how we want to set up the ordinance for approval. The discussion focused primarily around the general fund, and the difference that you see with version B is we've broken out the general fund by departments. So if any council members that want to,
That's the first one.
We don't have version,
The first one is B.
Yeah.
oh,
Mayor,
it's
just-
not labeled as A and B.
Mayor,
Okay.
just clarify, these are not departments, these are by major functions,
sure,
so we're clear.
major functions, functional classifications, as described and discussed at the F&A committee.
So it's just essentially offering the council a couple of different ways to look at the
Right.
budget.
So different ways you can appropriate to the appropriate level that you want to.
Mayor, can I?
Ask the city attorney to weigh in.
Yeah, some additional detail. Council may recall, particularly some members, particularly Councilmember Mayhew and I have had conversations over the past year about the executive's ability to make transfers within a fund in an adopted budget, and that's per the statute. And so the difference between these 2 ordinances, if you look at section 3 of each one of them, they refer to that section of the statute, 35A 34-200, and refers to the executive's authority to make transfers between individual appropriations within the fund. And the statute goes on to say, subject to such limitations as, if any, may be imposed by the legislative body. And so version B includes the limitation that the transfers between the individual appropriations within the general fund may be made only within the individual functional classifications that are set forth. By way of example, I think
Page 2.
on page 2, Snoqualmie Police is one of the functional classifications. So individual line items for Snoqualmie Police, the executive could make transfers within that, but couldn't transfer police money to fire and emergency management, or from fire and emergency management to parks.
It's the 5 functions listed under general fund on page 2.
Correct.
Administrative departments, Snoqualmie Police, Fire, Emergency Management, Parks, and non-departmental, which is rolling up.
And without a limitation imposed by the council, the chief executive would typically have the authority to make transfers anywhere within the general fund or anywhere within another identified fund here, the operating reserve, for example, or the revolving reserve. So
Councilmember Mayhew.
So just to further explain, there are some council members who have thought over the past year that, I'm holding up last year's budget document, that this document was the budget, that all the detail in here, pages and pages, was what we budgeted. That's not the case. It never was the case. We budgeted the entire general fund, which is about 20 million, well, let's call it $17 million. And the fact was that the way we passed the budget ordinance, the mayor could move the money around any way he wanted within that 17 million. So all of that work on budgeting departments never translated through to the actual budget document that we passed. This, I don't think anyone ever intended the line item budget to be something that we were passing. This this thing that's happening, that's being proposed here, where we break out those major functional areas, serves a sort of, to take us a step in between. It would not give, it would restrict the mayor from moving money anywhere amongst the 17 million, but it just holds him to the functions. So within police, we still give him the authority to move between categories within the police department, but it does limit him to the total that we give him for the police. So it doesn't go to the line item budget level, but it does give some expression of our budgeting limitations to at least the functional area. And so that's the purpose here, is to either do that, which is a sort of in-between level, if you will, that still gives plenty of authority to the mayor, but still further restriction than just the total, or the other version that's here would be the same as what we did last year, which just Fund 001, he gets 18.6 million, he can spend it wherever he wants. Well, that's a little overstatement, anywhere within the general fund and that he wants.
Okay.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
So
Councilor Solo.
the agenda bill before us, is that just approving or saying that are we deciding on which format now, or we're just saying we're going to pick one of these two formats?
Well, I would say you could provide your preference to the F&A committee, who could then make a recommendation come around the next council meeting on the 26th.
Well, clearly my recommendation, I don't think we have any evidence that the mayor has misused that power to shuffle money places, but I don't think it should be possible. So as far as I'm concerned, B is a no-brainer.
And the motion is to make budget adoption version be the version.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
And
Councilor Mayhew?
And if I could just ask, just so the council member can hear it, Mayor, it's my understanding that the administration has no objection
No
to this.
objection, yes, that's correct.
If I may, and so if the administration found itself, or a department found itself running up against, functional classification, running up against the limitations and came back to the council for a budget amendment to address that, if it was not done at the mid-biennium, then that would be likely, an emergency or other circumstance that would call for a supermajority of the council to then address that.
Mayor, I'd like to call the question on the motion.
All right, questions? I don't have a second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to call the question. Again, we need a supermajority to call the question. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, question's been called. Back to the original motion, or the motion to basically adopt option B. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
All right, motion passes. So, and now back to the Agenda Bill 18143. Again, don't think there's any further discussion at this time, so we'll move on. And actually, I don't know that we're going to be able to wrap these up in a half an hour. It was requested that we take a short 5-minute break at 8:30. Council want to keep plowing on, or they go up for a 5-minute break? Okay. So we'll do a 5-minute.
Sounds good.
All in favor of a 5-minute break? Could I see hands real quick?
Aye.
Okay. Opposed? All right, we're going to do a 5-minute break.
5-minute break.
Okay, the council meeting is back in session. If I could ask everyone to please take their seats. All right, with that, we're going to move on to Parks and Public Works Committee, Agenda Bill 18136, authorize a call for bids for the Southeast Stellar Tree Sidewalk Panel Replacement.
Pardon me? It's not coming. All right. As part of the 2017-2018 biennial budget, an enhancement was granted to fund the maintenance and replacement of street trees for the amount of $50,000 in 2017 and another $50,000 in 2018. All street trees in the SR1 phase of Snoqualmie Ridge development have critical health issues that are related to poor planting conditions. Staff designed a scoring criteria, attachment street tree replacement criteria, and entire streets within SR1 were scored according to this criteria. Southeast Stellar Way scored the highest, and therefore this will be our 2018 street tree project. Project budget is $140,000 and detailed in the council report. Authorize a call for bids for the Southeast Stellar Tree sidewalk panel replacement.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve Agenda Bill 18136 as stated by Councilmember Sunwall. Any discussion, council? Or I'm sorry, is there any member of the public that would like to comment on this item prior to action? Anna.
Anna Sotelo, 7713 Center Boulevard, Southeast. I just want to, I'm very thankful that this is happening. I think it's been pushed down on the CIP list for too long. I think it's been pushed off for too long. Again, I'm going to repeat that I think 10-year plan is way too long. I encourage all council members to go and walk Center Boulevard, to go and walk Pinehurst, to go and walk all of Snoqualmie. And I think that we need to do something much more quickly and take more urgent matters of getting these sidewalks fixed so that we don't have any more litigations of tripping people. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Becky?
Hi, thank you for that. I just talked to Dan Marcinko, too, about the problems we've been having with the boardwalk. Apparently, some boards have been fixed, and I think we're paying, I'm not sure, but I think we're paying for the people to maintain it, keep it clean. And then again, as you well
Becky, I'm
know,
gonna
we
ask
had
you-
two
Becky, I'm gonna
trip
ask you
and
to-
fall.
Becky, I'm going to ask you to focus your comments on the agenda bill.
Okay, well, on that happy note, good night, everybody.
All right, thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak to this agenda bill, this item? All right, see no one else move forward. Phil, do you want to kick it off?
Sure. There are three goals for this particular project, which is also part of a larger project to fix all of the issues within the SR1 streets. So the first goal is fix the existing issues conclusively, trees and sidewalks. Second goal is prevent further issues, and third is increase the tree life and the life of other assets such as the sidewalks. Tree life typically in these areas currently is 20 to 30 years. And so what we're shooting to do with this project is grow trees that will last between 50 and 70 years. So that's just broad context. On any specific questions, please go ahead.
Councilmember Sunwall.
So Phil, I'm just trying to remember here. My understanding is the budget of $140,000 is to rip up and replace sidewalks. It does not count cost of trees, but trees are sort of a rounding error in terms of the cost of this overall project, correct?
It's a bit more than sidewalks. For each of the tree planting strips, they'll be excavated to a depth of 3 feet, drainage installed, new soils installed, existing soils hauled off, new irrigation system, and new sod. In many ways, the trees are the final touch on this project, and that would be a separate item for 2019. And the cost per tree would be $150, 50 trees approximately going back. So we're looking at $7,500 in trees. That is not part of this $140,000.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Shepherd.
So it sounds like the Stellar is going to be treeless for at least a year?
I do not anticipate that it will be a year. So what we would do is we would remove trees just prior to the start of the project. The excavation would take a few weeks, and then the trees would go back in after that. There is an ideal tree planting time, so it could be a few months, but it would certainly not be a year.
Councilmember Jeans, Ross, and then Mayhew.
Phil, they're different trees, aren't they? Different kinds of trees?
So there's one species of tree on Southeast Stellar Way right now. They're ash trees. There are about 148 different species citywide that are planted in our streets. Does that answer your question, Councilmember?
Sort of. I mean, it seems like some trees would, even with the bad soil and bad drainage, some trees will tend to have roots that grow along the surface.
There is some truth to that, and this species, ash, are known for having surface roots. However, I would add that the main problem in SR1 is not a tree species problem, it's a site problem. It's the amount of available soil. The roots have no choice but to go on the surface because there is no soil below them.
Thank you.
Councilmember Ross.
So I know that we're looking at this also for the biennium budget, because you have tree fund included in there, right? So you'll continue doing this in other neighborhoods where we
Correct.
have issues. So right now, you're going out for bid for this particular project where you can take into consideration and kind of look at the whole scope of all the different projects that are coming up, that perhaps you can get, I don't know, some type of good deal overall that they would continue on.
So my answer to that is that we will not be completing this project in 2018. And so we'll have a contractor on site in 2019 to do this. So that contractor will be mobilized, will be on site, and will be familiar with these issues. So that may well be an advantageous situation where that helps with bidding. But beyond that, I'm having difficulty planning for future projects because I'm not sure what funding will be approved at this point. So once that funding is approved, then we'll scope out what's ahead.
Councilmember Mayhew.
All right, so I'm completely in support of this project. My questions are entirely related to the funding for it and the budget. So if I'm understanding this correctly, this work will most certainly all happen in 2019.
That is correct.
We have budget in the 17-18 biennium, which will pay for the project that's being proposed here. And so we're trying to use that funding to get this project underway. And we'll carry the funding over in some fashion to 19 to pay for it. And then there's additional requests, I know, in 19 for additional work of this nature.
Correct.
Okay. So am I correct in understanding that 100,000 of this will come out of Fund 001? I found the item in 001 that appears to be this item, so I just want to verify that that's the item. 50,000 a year, budgeted 17 and 18 appropriated?
Bill, hang on. Phil,
So for the 1920 budget, the most likely place that you're going to find this
Sorry, I'm asking
back
about
to the 17-18 budget, so likely under the Parks Maintenance
which was in
Division.
001? Because I found it in 001.
Yeah, 001.
Okay.
Yes.
So, and then the remaining 40,000 is coming out of 326 Sidewalks Repair Fund? Capital
Correct.
Fund? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm wondering then is, in order to facilitate spending this biennium's money, if we move this 100,000 that was appropriated in 001, so it doesn't just fall into reserves and disappear, if we move this over to 326, it'll stay there and be available for this in 19, right?
So part of what we're doing in 1920 is we're going to probably move the entire street tree program into the stormwater fund, given the association between street trees and how they can actually support the water quality that we have here in Snoqualmie. So that's likely what we would propose and what you'll see on Thursday.
Right, so I get that, and what I'm suggesting is that there's 100,000 that we've appropriated in the biennium we're still in, 17-18. I would like to not see that 100,000 just disappear. I'd like to see us move that into 326 and use it for this, and whatever money you come up from the source that you just said would then be available for additional work beyond this particular project. I think the reason we're talking about this today is because we're trying to spend the 18 money, and I'm trying to say, don't we need to do something like what I'm suggesting in order to make that happen?
So it sounds like a transfer.
Yes.
You can tell me if I'm wrong or not.
That's what I'm suggesting, yeah.
You're suggesting a transfer from the general fund basically into the street.
Right, so that
Or the
at the end of
sidewalks.
18, so at the end of 18.
Is that a taboo?
The funding doesn't disappear on us, because it'll just fall into general fund balance, and it'll be,
Well,
we'll lose
I
that
mean,
appropriation.
What I would say is we're thinking of potential other ways that we might want to use that $100,000, and so I would prefer to wait until Thursday for us to possibly describe that to council.
In that case, I think we need to wait on this agenda bill.
No.
No.
But this is
No.
just go to bid. We can always say no.
You're going to get the bids, council's going to appropriate the funds for the contract.
But the funds are already appropriated, is what I'm saying. I don't want to lose that appropriation. I think we're about to lose it on December 31.
No, under the statute, if it's, the obligation's contracted for prior to the close of the fiscal biennium and furnished or completed thereafter, then it's appropriate to make the payment for it.
Totally agree. I guess I was under the assumption that it's unlikely we'll get this contracted by December 31. And by the way, if you do, you understand, you'll have to carry it forward as an 001 appropriation. So that's going to take all that budget. You're going to have to add this 100,000 to what you've already got there.
This is the opposite of what you said.
I'm just trying to get this out to 326 so it doesn't foul up the new biennium and we get to use this money the way we appropriated at this biennium. I don't want him to lose his funding.
Well, neither do we, but this is the proper time to go to bid.
No, I-
Contractors do.
That's fine.
Okay.
Not arguing that. I totally agree with that. That's great. I'm trying to protect his funding so that this funding from this biennium stays available in the next biennium instead of having to take it from new sources, which would cut down on his total project.
Dan, do you expect the contract to be, the bids to be back in time for council to be looking at an agenda bill prior to the end of December?
Actually, prior to the middle of December.
Excuse me, yes, there's no second meeting potentially.
No. It won't be back in front of council, but we will have the numbers from.
No, in front of council with an agenda bill. When do you expect that to be back? Probably January?
First meeting in January.
And where's the accountant? Can we not encumber those funds or not for a contract payment?
Can you repeat that question, Bob?
Can those funds be encumbered at the end of the year for this contract?
Up through January 20th.
So council could be, we look at an agenda bill, first meeting in January then?
You sure you understood his question?
Possibly not.
To pay for this contract when the bids come back, could council approve an agenda bill in January? Could those funds be encumbered for 2018, from 2018 funds? You said up to January 20th, is that correct?
Correct, right. So anything that expenses incurred up through January 20th could be applied to
Expenses or contract?
expenses in 2018.
He's not answering he's answering a different question. What he's saying is, it is true what he's saying. What he's saying is that if you've already set the contract, then through January 20th, he can pay it. I'm worried that we won't have this contract approved by then, so I'm just trying to protect the money. There's really no we may be spending, I don't think there's a downside of what I'm proposing.
Well, we could certainly look at the 2019 budget as well to cover this expenditure.
So we will have sufficient funding included as a part of our Thursday discussion for street trees in the stormwater fund on Thursday. So I can guarantee you that the money's there.
Councilor Mayhew, perhaps for the sake of time,
That we're going to appropriate it
you
for
could make
19.
a motion.
Now we don't have to
Can't I
raise
talk?
taxes?
Councilmember Shepherd,
What is 326?
it's the sidewalk fund.
326 is the sidewalks construction fund.
It's a
Sidewalk
fund,
repair fund.
okay, and what is it funded by? Is it funded by general funds, or is it funded by bonds, or what is it?
Go ahead.
Correct. So it's been primarily funded in the past by essentially a one-time draw on your revolving reserve fund back probably in 2015 or so.
So it's debt funds, right?
No, there's no debt, no debt.
What was the question again?
It's not funded by bonds, then?
No, it's not funded by bonds.
Okay.
Councilor Mayhew.
I move that we transfer $100,000 from Fund 001 to Fund 326 to fund this project.
Second?
I have a motion and a second as stated by Councilmember Mayhew. Any further discussion?
Can you specify the biennium?
in the current biennium 17-18.
Second what he just said again.
Mr. Mayor?
Someone's catching the language. Councilmember Lissay?
I appreciate what Councilmember Mayhew's doing in trying to do this, but I also am hearing that staff would like to present this to us in more detail in terms of where the budget money is going on Thursday. We can always take this up at the next council meeting. This is not, it's not super pressing as far as I am aware of. The bid could still go out this month. It would just be after the next council meeting. And at least then we'll have a full picture. So I'm not sure whether making, the amendment to what, that's the motion that's been put forward. I'd like to hear from staff more, and it certainly doesn't sound like they're prepared to have that discussion until Thursday.
Do you want to say anything else, Bob? Or?
I would prefer to wait till Thursday night, have staff present what they have in mind for this. The council can still take action at a future meeting.
And not approve this tonight?
No, to let the actual funding, the source, the funding, this agenda bill could be approved. Go to bid.
So approve the project without the funding. I'm a little lost. But
Authorize a call for bids for the Southeast Stellar Tree Sidewalk Panel Replacement. All we're doing is authorizing a call for bids. That's all the agenda bill is.
All right, but then you're amending the agenda bill, which you're amending the agenda bill to remove any reference to funding or what funding sources are for the time being. And that's why I'm suggesting, for the sake of time, I just want to get this project done and move on, so we're not revisiting everyone. And I think that's Councilmember Mayhew's intent, at least for next year, is not to revisit this project and reapprove it all over again. So if it's not too much trouble, can we just move the monies if the council approves that, and then move on tonight and move on this project?
If council votes it that way, we'll do it.
All right.
But you'll still need, Mayor, to come back in front of the council to award the bid once the low bidder's been identified.
All right, any further discussion? I saw a couple hands up. Councilmember, I'm going to do a little round robin. Councilmember Shepherd, I'm sorry. Councilmember Jeans?
The meeting on Thursday is a budget, it's a special meeting, and if we can just add to the agenda that we can take some action on Thursday, if we're authorized to take action on Thursday, then I'm willing to do that, and actually even with Councilmember Mayhew's suggestion, we can still do that.
Councilmember Holloway?
So, guys, I don't think anybody is opposed to this action. I think we're worried about how we account for it, pun intended. Based on that, I think we should move forward tonight to move this out to bid. And we take up the discussion Thursday that we want to see where the $140,000 is in the next biennial budget. And that it is not deducted from the existing, that it's a carry forward. I'm not sure we're prepared to make all the accounting decisions tonight, but I think we can make the decision to go out to bid.
Councilmember Summerall?
I didn't call the question.
What he said.
I'm sorry.
I've never said that before in a year and a half. But what Councilmember Holloway said. Wow, that hurt.
All right.
So actually, what Councilmember Holloway said makes a lot of sense, and
Also something
it's
that's never
not-
been said.
But it's not the matter, it's not the matter that is before us in its amended form, because in its amended form, we're suggesting that it go from one fund to another fund. So I guess I'm against the matter that is before us, so that Brian can then introduce this matter, which is different than what is before us.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Lissay?
maybe this falls in the same category of something that's never been said, but I agree with Councilmember Sunwall and Holloway.
So I think,
I believe we should vote down the amendment and move forward with the original agenda bill. So I'm calling the question.
if you have to second the
I'm
call to
listening for
question,
a
I second
second.
it.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, question's been called. So again, we're voting on Councilmember Mayhew's motion to move the $100,000 from 001 into the sidewalk fund. All those in favor? All those opposed?
Aye.
No.
Okay, motion does not pass, so we're back to the original motion. Although it seems like there's still concerns raised about this agenda bill does have specific reference to funding sources, does it not? Oops. Okay, so there'd have to be someone make a motion to amend.
They're still valid for the current biennial.
What's that?
They're still valid for the current biennial.
It's been in the current biennial.
So if you like it in its current form, we can do that, otherwise they'll have to come back and revisit it per Councilmember Holloway's concerns, if we end of the next year.
Thursday.
I mean, either way, you're gonna have to revisit it at some point, whether it's approving the bid or looking at it again this year on Thursday, or on Thursday or next year, so. What's the council's pleasure? Councilmember Sunwell.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, I don't know what Sturbank feels about this. I don't think, the meeting is a budget meeting. I don't think we're allowed to approve anything on Thursday. We'd have to call a special, we'd have to amend the meeting, wouldn't we?
You could add
To pass legislation?
Add an item if you'd like to.
You have time to change the agenda so long
Yeah,
as it's
but-
done
Have to be
24
noticed.
hours before.
Okay. Yeah, let's get Phil out to bid on this and
Come back.
come back,
Come back next year,
whenever.
if
Just
necessary.
get this out to bid, or we have nothing to talk about.
All right, any further discussion, Councilmember Ross?
But I thought we just voted that down so that we could talk about this on Thursday to ensure that we are able to pull the money from 2017 and 2018 into 2019. Correct?
The
Well, I
agenda
think-
bill is just to send it out to bid. The summary statement is expressing the current funding sources that can always be amended. We are simply voting whether or not to let Phil and Dan take this out to bid so that we can get a bid that will someday be funded by some source that may be what's posted here or may not be.
Councilmember Mayhew. All right. I mean, we face these issues every year as we come to the end of a budget year, and so we typically roll these items over automatically, but certainly open to having some more formal process. All right. Any further discussion, council? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. All right, with that, moving on to Agenda Bill 18137, authorize a call for bids for the utility infrastructure improvement project.
This project will repair or replace existing water main, roadway surface, and various repairs of stormwater facilities along Alpha, Gamma, and Delta Streets, as well as Schussman, Euclid, and a portion of Falls Avenue. Move to authorize a call for bids for the utility infrastructure improvement project.
Need a second,
Second.
folks?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve Agenda Bill 18137 as stated by Councilmember Sunwall. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on this item prior to action? Again, specifically to this item. All right, seeing no one move forward. Any discussion? Brian?
Well, just briefly, and I won't get into details, there will be a decision later on. There are a couple of bid options or alternatives in here of doing curbs and doing sidewalks. We should take that up and how we deal with that when it comes back from bid.
All right, any further discussion or questions on this item, council? All right, Councilmember Shepherd?
I think before we, allow the public to decide whether they want to get up and speak, it would be nice to have a friendlier version of what we're discussing shared with the people that have taken the time to come to our meeting. And I don't know if we want to do that now, but I think that somebody had made that point, and I thought it was a good one.
Any further discussion, council? Right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Brian. Good job, Brian.
Oh, that man.
Yeah. Any other report for Parks and Public Works Committee?
No.
All right, Community Development Committee report. Any report for Community Development Committee?
Jim, would you want to comment on whether there's anything for community development?
Nothing else? No report.
All right.
Thank you.
Finance Administration Committee, Agenda Bill 18144, Agreement for Payment of Utility General Facilities Charges.
All right. Summary and motion. This agreement is to resolve a dispute between the Snoqualmie Valley School District number 410 regarding the amount owed by the district for utility general facilities charges, GFCs, associated with the Mount Si High School construction project. Move to approve the agreement for payment of utility general facility charges with the Snoqualmie Valley School District and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve Agenda Bill 18144 as stated by Councilmember Holloway. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on this item, specifically this item prior to action? Seeing no one move forward, council, any discussion? And Councilmember Lassay, I'm sorry, Ryan didn't stick around, but I know you had some questions pertaining to this one too. I don't know if those were answered by email.
These ones were answered as sufficiently, and the council was copied on that response.
All right, excellent. Councilmember Sunwell?
So I know at one point this was part of an executive session. I am curious if it can be discussed how we went from 600 something to 300 something. And that's the answer is just, it was a good old fashioned compromise, but I thought it was pretty clear to me that the way the city ordinances were set up, that it was pretty defensible to be asking for the 614.
Well, you wrote that. The Mayor Larson and I sat down with the district superintendent and Jelani, as well as Ryan Stokes, who was here this evening, and we just negotiated. We thought it was a fair settlement of the dispute.
I think they would, from their perspective, they would argue the same, that they felt they had a strong case to say they didn't owe the fees at all. So again, it was a good old-fashioned compromise. All right. Any further discussion, council, or questions? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
No.
Okay, with that, is there any other reports for Finance Administration Committee? Or sorry, the agenda bill passes.
No additional report. No additional report.
All right, Public Safety Committee report.
No additional report.
All right, are there any items for the committee of the whole? Well, I guess that they would have been Councilmember Mahan and Councilmember Sunwell.
Mayor, I believe that the city's announced a town hall. I wonder if you could confirm if that's the case, and if so, what date it is?
Joan?
As posted on the website, put in our e-news, Facebook, Twitter, and many other places, it's December 1st at 6:30 p.m. in the council chambers. I just want to make sure everyone knows we've communicated it, and we will be continuing to do so. It's at 6?
Joan?
No, they're December
What's the date
6th.
today? The date, December?
December 6th. I'm sorry.
Okay.
You're right,
Thank you.
December 6th.
All right, thank you.
I'm on cold medication, sorry.
Like expired or?
Can we have someone from staff confirm that actual date?
Councilmember, hang on.
So hold on, Joan.
Hang on, Joan. Councilmember Sunwell.
So do we have an estimated length that will last, and do we have a format? Because I want to make sure citizens understand kind of and me, frankly, understand what the format of that'll be, so there's no misunderstanding.
Mayor?
Yeah, I can speak to that. I mean, we anticipate a couple-hour meeting, and after a lot of discussions internally and whatnot, we decided that what folks most desired was a very informal format, that it wouldn't be, my talking at them for a half hour, 45 minutes, that it would just be a open-ended Q&A, opportunity for just give and take. That's what people, I think, have most wanted, just to be able to have all the council members that want to come, or myself, take questions and have open dialogue with citizens.
We did advertise it as 6:30 to 8 p.m., so there would be an end time. Also, I encourage anyone that would like more information to sign up for our e-news or follow our Facebook page. We do make a point of trying to get this information out. So, thank you.
All right, thank you, John. Councilmember Shepherd, then Councilmember Sunwell.
The mayor has sent a letter or email to King County council members regarding their comprehensive plan, and he wants to change it so that they will allow annexations more frequently than what they're proposing in their amendment for their current plan. Now, the mayor sent this email out to the council without asking the council what their preference was on this issue. And I've sent several emails to the mayor and to King County Council regarding the fact that really the roles and responsibilities of the mayor is to this council's supposed to set the policy, and the mayor is supposed to implement what the policy the council has requested. This procedure wasn't followed for this communication. The mayor had sent the email to King County Council representing it as he was representing the city without first passing it by council. And I just wanted to put that on public record that I do not agree with not passing this by city council, not giving us an opportunity to review what his message was and whether or not we are in agreement with it.
All right, thank you. So for the sake of time tonight, the city attorney has been planning to do a more detailed response to the separation of powers, the role of the mayor versus the council in regards to such activities. And so we could try to get into it tonight. I think it would be more productive if we just waited for that response to the Councilmember Shepherd, and it will be distributed to all the council on that issue. Councilmember Sunwell?
Yeah, at the risk of perhaps being unpopular, I would like to understand, yeah, I know. I heard some mumbling in the audience, mostly from Anna. But I would like to better understand, I saw an email sent around, I believe is by you or Chief Correa. I'd like to have a better understanding of the process that goes into place when deciding to send both a firefighter and our primary fire engine 1,000 whatever miles away to fight fires. As noble as that cause is, there's no question. I am admittedly concerned that we are relying upon a backup fire engine, and we've already talked about needing to fund a new fire engine and, put a couple thousand miles in those things. I'd imagine that weighs into the life of the vehicle. So again, I'm not questioning anybody's desire to help because we're all part of one big community, so I understand that. But I would just like to understand, because that was a decision that was made by, the executive branch, and fine, I just kind of want to understand that a little better. I know I'm not alone behind these tables.
So, Chief, I don't think that's a question you can answer. I know you're going to get up and say how you feel you have the city community's needs covered with interlocal agreements and other commitments and equipment and so forth. That's not his question, though. His question is...
It's part of it.
Well,
I am concerned that our primary fire engine is 1,000 miles away.
But I heard your question was primarily about...
It is for both of you.
About a, separation of powers issue or protocol. Who has
I'm not even
authority?
saying we should have been once I wiped away the, yay, Snoqualmie, thanks for going and helping out. I'm like, wait a second. We have a backup fire engine.
No, it's a great question.
So just help me understand, because obviously there was a meeting and there was an issue addressed of, well, why, Chief, are we sending out our primary fire engine? And you had a response to that. I just kind of want to understand kind of a basic recap of how that went.
Sure. Do you want me to take a shot at it?
Go ahead, Chief.
Okay. So I heard probably 3 or 4 questions in there.
There might
so
have been 8, I don't know.
Possibly. I'll do my best to try to capture them all. So the first question was the process in which we go through when a request is made. So these requests come from the state. The city council has approved an EMAC agreement with the state that allows for when assets are requested from outside of the state, that we have the ability to send them. So that agreement is in place, and then when the orders come in, if we're interested in sending somebody or a piece of apparatus, it could be anything from sending, a public works vehicle upwards, or sending fire or police staff out of state to help support those events. The process that we use internally is the request usually comes to me from our local zone coordinator is what they call it. So the request will come into the zone will reach out to me, then we will look at it, see if we have any assets that we can send, see if we have any personnel that we can send with it. And then if it looks to be a reasonable or sensible request, we'll forward the request up to the city administrator and the mayor for the final determination. And then we usually have a lot of conversation that goes into that. Regarding this request specifically, they were looking for 100 fire engines from the state of Washington. I think I can get the exact number for you, but I think they ended up getting, I heard of 5 strike teams that actually made it down there, which is roughly 25 engines. So, but I'll get back to you with that exact number later. Regardless of the number and all that other stuff, that doesn't weigh into, or the size of the request, that doesn't weigh into our decision-making. What weighs into the decision-making is, what do we have for assets, what do we have for available personnel to send with them, and then whether or not it makes sense for us to do it. This decision wasn't taken lightly. We have a primary engine and we have our backup engine. Our backup engine, 3 years ago, we actually equipped it, so it was what's called a reserve ready. That was approved as part of the budget process with the council, so that apparatus is equipped with about 99% of the equipment that's on that frontline apparatus. And the reason why we did that was in the case we have a local disaster and we need to send fire department staff locally here in the city, like an earthquake or something like that, we have more than one piece of apparatus that we can send. So the reserve apparatus, when we move that into frontline apparatus, that can happen at any time. When the vehicle goes out of service for maintenance, when it goes out of service for, it needs new tires, needs to have its pump tested. We recently just had a little bit of work done on the motor for it. And that was part of the decision-making that went to it as well, that it was probably mechanically in the best shape that it always is and is at this point. So all of those pieces came into consideration when we had requested that. As far as the conversation about the apparatus replacement, that vehicle is not due for replacement until 2024. And it's a fine piece of apparatus. The challenge that we have with the apparatus is they no longer make them. And that's why we are looking at, and so if it is damaged, the backup apparatus, if it is damaged, it may be difficult to get parts for it. So that's why we've started the conversation about replacing it with an aerial apparatus. So I want to make sure that that's not confused, that we have this broken down piece of apparatus locally. We have a well-equipped, certified piece of fire apparatus that is an equivalent to, just not as new as our frontline apparatus, which was sent out of state.
Can I just want to be clear on that, because I previously thought something else. So our frontline apparatus, the one that we prefer to have responding normally, that's not the one that the manufacturer no longer exists.
Correct.
That is for the backup apparatus.
Our backup apparatus, the manufacturer no longer exists. Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Ross.
So, and maybe not everyone knows about the mutual aid and other things that are, if this particular one that we have here breaks down, then when should we discuss mutual aid?
Yeah, so we have an interlocal agreement with, there's a couple of options for us that exist. Our primary, we have a shared staffing and resources agreement right now that was adopted by the city council that allows us to exchange firefighters with the city of the city with Falls City and Duval Fire District. At any time, a Duval firefighter could be working in the city here, or a Snoqualmie firefighter could be working in the Duval Fire District or Falls City. The reason why that document was established was actually for situations like this. We have a lot of firefighters in the region that go to Eastern Washington to deploy for wildland firefighting, and small departments like the 3 of our departments struggle with getting backfill staffing. When somebody goes out of town, it's incumbent on the rest of the organization to actually fill those positions. So by having a larger pool to choose from, it makes it a little bit easier to do that. So we have an interlocal agreement for that program, which allows us to use Duval and Falls City Fire Department's apparatus. They have spare apparatus that if this one breaks down, we pick up the phone, we pick up their engine, and they can use it. As a backup plan as well, we have the ability to borrow one from Eastside Fire and Rescue if we had to as well. We've done that in the past. They do all the maintenance and mechanical work on our apparatus currently, so we have the ability to use theirs as well.
And we'd be reimbursed for all those costs.
Correct.
Councilmember Shepherd?
So the firefighters are coming from Duval and Falls City. Are they also going down to California?
Correct. So the way the system works in this region is actually, we actually sent a firefighter down earlier this year in August when the Santa Rosa fire picked up down there. Firefighter Robert Laswell deployed on a Bothell fire engine with the firefighters from Bothell and Shoreline in the region. So basically what they'll do is if an agency agrees to send a piece of apparatus, they'll use firefighters from the area to staff that. Ironically, what ended up happening with this deployment is they sent 2 firefighters from Duval, 1 from Falls City, and the Snoqualmie firefighter to be the operator of the apparatus.
Councilmember Summerall?
So what you just said actually kind of makes me nervous. And again, I'm not trying to be critical because I know how you do your job great. But what you outlined is the backup plan is to use Falls City and Duval firefighters who are now depleted resources because they're also down in California. Did I misunderstand that?
No, I think you've joined 2 issues together. The question from Councilmember Ross was about apparatus.
Okay.
So if the apparatus breaks down, then we will utilize Falls City's apparatus or Duval's fire apparatus. We've only sent 1 firefighter out of the area, so
we're good on people.
If we have staffing needs, we'll utilize that group first, so it's not a huge burden on the organization. And if none of them are available, then we'll reach out to that bigger pool. And if none of them are available, then we would mandatory somebody internally. We haven't had that situation yet.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief.
Sure.
Councilmember Shepherd?
So I'd like to thank the fire department for their bravery in going down there and fighting that fire. That was a huge, huge undertaking.
I will certainly pass that on to the firefighters that went. Firefighter Laswell was down there for 21 days earlier this year. This time, Firefighter Mundy's is expected to be back November 22nd. I just looked up the report from the fire that they're on. They're on the Woolsey fire, which is down by Thousand Oaks and down by Malibu area. They're at 40% containment right now. There's over 5,000 firefighters fighting that incident with 57,000 structures that are threatened.
Oh my God.
And they're expecting full containment within the next 5 to 7 days. A lot of it has to do with the Santa Ana winds. And I'd be remiss in passing this on as well to the council. The value of sending the firefighters and the equipment down there is they come back with this experience that if we were to have a wildland fire here and they're on duty, they're better equipped to protect the community from those types of incidents. The threat of a wildland fire, we've been having this conversation in public safety lately, is becoming a real issue in Western Washington. It's becoming to the forefront of a lot of our meetings and information. The mayor just sent me some information today about a class that's coming, or a workshop that's coming up at the Tulalip Indian Tribe that's hosting a bunch of professionals to talk about this issue. And without having adequately trained firefighters to be able to do these types of events, and they'll get that in Eastern Washington and in California, it's a huge asset to the community. So it goes beyond the reimbursement that we get back from them. They pay for all the expenses. They'll actually be, and I can generate a full report once firefighter money gets back, with the amount of money that will be generated by actually deploying that resource out of the community. It's over $20,000 potentially, depending on the length of deployment, that the engine itself will get paid for that. These events are very expensive, and the city has the opportunity to make some additional funding to offset those costs and to pay for the wear and tear on the apparatus.
So to be clear, I'm very appreciative, I think you know this personally, of what you and your fire department do. My question was not being accusatory. I was just trying to understand the process, since I don't recall ever having sent an apparatus down there since I've been on council, so I just wanted to understand. So please pass along, I think, all of our thoughts to firefighter who's down there and to your whole department. So
I will. Thank you for that. And I didn't take it that way. I take every opportunity to showcase the department or answer any questions that you guys have anytime.
Councilmember Mayhew?
Yeah, I'm just curious. So where we get funding back to offset the wear and tear on the vehicles, do we get that, in terms of how we process that financially, do we get that into that equipment repair and replacement fund so that it's available there for the
We put it in the sidewalk fund.
Put it in the sidewalk. Actually, we didn't put it in the sidewalk fund. So, no, seriously, do we get it in there, or does it kind of disappear into our general fund?
So this is the first time that we've done this.
I would expect that it's money's in for the ER&R, or the Equipment Replacement and Repair Fund. It should be.
Sounds great,
Because
yeah.
I have a feeling, I have a strong belief, and Chief and I have not discussed this, but I would expect that engine's going to need some TLC when it gets back.
Yeah.
It's going to be running, obviously, a couple thousand miles to get up and back. New set of tires for sure, some other things I'm sure you'll have to be going over mechanically to be sure it's still running well, and I'm sure it will.
Yeah, so they're not allowed to leave the state, and they're not allowed to leave the fire scene until the vehicle is actually evaluated by a certified mechanic. When it gets back, we'll send them through that same evaluation. It'll be time for general maintenance on it. Like I said, it just had some work done on it recently, so it's in very good condition to make this trip. This is the first time that I'm aware of the city actually made a decision like this. This is a big decision, and we didn't take it lightly, and there was a lot of factors that went into the decision-making process.
If I could, I believe when the flood was down in Chehalis, we did send some public works equipment down. We reimbursed for that. I believe that went back into the R&R, but I could double check. That was probably 10 years ago now. So.
Yeah, and I assume like the reimbursement of Monday's time would go into, to compensate for overtime or other costs that we incurred in personnel as well. So fleet into fleet, personnel into personnel, and so forth.
Yeah, we generally what I end up doing with that is when those funds come in, we'll pay the dollars out and then make a request for a budget amendment so that it's adequate. It's adequately reflected in the budget process.
Thank you. And the issue, the other fundamental question you were asking, Councilmember Sun, was about the who makes that decision, and I've asked Bob Sturbank to address that in his response on the other, because since they're kind of related on those separation of powers, if that's okay. For the sake of time tonight, we'll just, I assumed it was under, kind of.
I don't even necessarily need that, but if you want to, great. It doesn't need to be talked about tonight for sure.
Well, the question, it did occur to me, should I be checking in with the council? But this is obviously an emergency, and I figured it falls under declaration of emergency, although it's an external one, but it's related to local agreements. So I'm sort of curious about having that question threaded or answered more exact for the future, for future purposes as well. I have no interest in abusing that if it wasn't acted on appropriately. So we'll check into that and get back to, or respond to the council on that question. All right. All right, if there's no other item, Councilmember Shepherd?
So back to the Salish expansion and the fact that the one parcel, or the combination of parcels was about 100 acres, and the representation was...
Mr. Mayor, point of order.
I'm sustained.
This is not an item on the agenda.
It's not on the agenda, and although I've been a little lax with the committee of the whole, these were not items that were put on, some were kind of a report of nature, but this is a decision that was made, we're not going to relitigate that decision tonight. So are there any other items for committee of the whole before we move on? All right, with that, staff meetings are written and included in your agenda packet at the first meeting of the month. However, at this time, are any other questions from the staff or comments? All right, seeing nothing further there, we will move on to citizen, no, we don't do that anymore, sorry. Announcements. At this time, we're going to go into executive session regarding litigation pursuant to RCW 42.30.110, Section 1I. Call executive session. Ask Bob Larson and Bob Sturbank to remain. The executive session is anticipated to last approximately 45 minutes, and there may be action.
Excuse me, Mayor, you need to also announce the other two.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Can you state the names, please?
Bob Marconi.
Brian Guthrie.
And Brian Guthrie from
Asheville Beal.
Asheville Beal, thank you.
All right.
I'd like to make a motion to extend the meeting past 10 o'clock. Sounds like we'll need to.
Okay. So is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to extend the meeting past 10 o'clock. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Doesn't mean you have
Aye.
to.
All right.
Nay.
Opposed? Motion is carried.
I'm just going to nay it.
All right, with that, everybody else can go home and enjoy the rest of their long evening.